Welcome to the Improviding Life podcast, where we explore how life can be more livable. This is Lori Crawford, your host. It's time for another guest episode. This week we have Dawn Scheffler, host of Sheffy's Sandbox podcast. And we had such a fun sort of like playgroundy flow conversation where we were able to have conversations about our bodies, our relationship with our bodies, and really being able to acknowledge how the things that we are experiencing sort of have this resonance in our body and how they can come back up as we're revisiting things that we've experienced, and how do we hold a tender, playful space for ourselves along the way. So without further ado, here is this week's episode. Hello, everyone. I am so excited. I am here with Dawn Scheffler. We have already been speaking for 42 days, so I just want to thank her for still being here with me. And I like to start guest play dates with describing their energy and like what it feels like to me before giving them an opportunity to introduce themselves, how they would like to be introduced. So I'll describe April as someone who is not afraid to be in this role of like subtle service, right? I feel like April's energy is just when she's being herself, it's experienced as this reflective mirror of like, oh, I see you. Here's this thing I want to share out to you. And so it feels like without much effort, at least on the receiving end, that every conversation's in service to some part of my beingness, And so I just wanted to thank you for that ability to just be yourself in a way that feels really communal and supportive of those around you. And now I'll give you, the chance to actually introduce yourself.
Oh gosh, I think it's so easy to introduce ourselves by the things that we do or the roles that we play. But basically, I am one of those adults that Lori is rehabilitating to reconnect with my body and reclaim my body and to have fun. So
I will say 82 brownie points for such a nuanced, juicy introduction. I just like totally love that feeling of like, this is how introductions, quote, are supposed to go, but actually what's relevant now is this. So like, yes, brownie points. Oh, and for people listening and for you to know, brownie points are redeemable at any time for anything. So
nice.
You can also exchange them for non-brownie points. I've had someone want empanada points, and I was like, I want empanada points. I fucking love empanadas. So whatever that is, just know that now you have some in your little brownie point bank. Oh my gosh. Nope. I was trying to switch piggy bank and brownies, and then my whole brain just said, you're doing too much. And whatever type of place you like to stash your resources, like a little squirrel, right? You have a little tree. Oh, I would love that, like a fairy tree.
I also, because I'm in day 2 of your Face Your Feelings. Is that what it's called? The challenge?
Face Your Feeling Friendsy, but like for a friend, just to confuse people.
On Tuesday, not to reveal too much, but treat yourself Tuesday. And we actually get to watch you eat a brownie.
Oh my gosh, that is what I had that day. Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
I'm like, I want to redeem my brownie points for brownies.
And I'm pretty sure I did say in that, but just for other people to entice you more, I can really, really, really bother people with how I eat baked goods. So, like, have you seen someone bite into a Kit Kat and everyone's like, what, you're supposed to break them? Whenever there's a cake or brownies, I cut a square out of the dead ass middle of it and I eat that first. Like, I just want the centerpiece. And people be like, why is there a hole? And I'll be like, don't you mean a perfectly crafted square out of the middle? It's because to me, that's the best part. But with pasta, I want like the crunchy outsides where the noodles start to get chewy, but I don't want the corners when it's a baked good. So it's just so funny. I have like violated a lot of people's ideas of what a pan of baked goods is supposed to look like. And I just cut it right out the middle. So I remember now recording that there's like the middle, It's just so
I see
great.
that's another thing I love about your beingness in this world is you, by being you, you grant people permission to be themselves and to have fun, and screw the expectations of correctness. So thank you,
Yeah.
Lori.
Well, and thank you for bringing that in. And it's so funny because I'm really feeling that. So I pulled a card before we started our session, and I got the sea serpent. And the sea serpent, it's visualized as, essentially like you're going after your own tail. So a lot of people can take this energy as, how are you sort of like cannibalizing yourself, or are you like overgiving? Are you not allowing newness in? But another sort of message with this energy is, like, are you exerting yourself or chasing this idea that you need to be understood? And then how can we make some space to actually be like, fuck being understood. There's something that I feel, like the certainty, the sureness of within myself. And so for all we know, the sea serpent is, like up the puppy of the sea, right? Is it just chasing its tail because it's fun? Like, why do we have to think that just because, you might have these like gnarly looking fang teeth that you're trying to essentially like eat your tail, right? Maybe it's just like, oh, I like catching my tail sometimes. So I'm just feeling that energy too of, I want to play with that for the rest of our time together of just, where have we maybe been, taking in that self-policing idea of there's a right way to be doing things, and how do I really want to be doing it? Or, how would I really be navigating this moment if I let myself?
Oh, there's so much there. Okay, so one of the things, I'm going back. I know you're the one
Take
with
me back.
ADHD, but maybe I should reevaluate. Maybe I do too, but I like to jump around a lot. One of the things I wanted to commend you for is for you talk about in the video how you've had to edit and modify your diet because of the things that because you're breastfeeding and Mercury is having like these reactions. I faced something similar when I was breastfeeding my child. She's 10 years old now, so that ended a long time ago. But to me, food was such the go-to remedy for me. Whatever was happening, I found some, like, my moon's in Taurus, right? So like food was the comfort. It was what I would reward myself with. It was the meaning, the meaning to life that kept things going. And so when I was having a lot of like postpartum depression, and then I had lost my brother in an accident, and I had a lot of things going on, and then like my child was like colicky and like crying all the time. And so then it was this weird mental place of like I'm poisoning my child. That's what it felt like. That's the mental talk, right? And but yet all the things that made me feel good and kind of presented me with these shreds of sanity, I felt like were being taken away from me. And if I chose my mental health, over my child, it was this horrible mental place. And so I don't know what your relationship is with food, Lori, but I just want to commend you for that sacrifice, because I know for me, it definitely felt like a sacrifice. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I know you know this, but it doesn't last forever. And you got this. And I know Mercury is so much the better for it. So,
Well, I want to thank you, like, I mean, like a soul level thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. And not just for us, as people in space with you right now, and for those listening, but because your body now is experiencing that moment again, right? And
yeah.
that can be this feeling of, oh no, well, is this puddle actually a sinkhole? Will I be able to surface again? So I just want to first thank you for even taking that leap. And it's about my relationship with food. I say my name is in calories, literally calories, so you can tell I call it food motivation, right? Like I am all about food, like I so am. And so what I'm navigating right now is this curiosity of, what are the sensory based experiences I love about food? And can there I find alternative foods that provide that aspect? Because like I know, for example, I'm a texture eater. Like, so like I was mentioning earlier, I want the chewy pasta parts, right? But I want the almost dough like baked good aspects. So it's like, what foods now can I have that can provide that experience? And so I've been able to get curious about how I can be less rigid about what foods provide that and more about like, can there actually be this like, holy shit, I found it, eureka excitement moment of when something provides that. Um, and then totally get pissed off when something doesn't. I'm like, this was so expensive because it's gluten-free and vegan and all the things, and can all of that exist. But to your point, those thoughts, like, let's just normalize the shit out of that too. Is like our minds will say things like we're harming our babies by not being able to be perfect, right? And not being able to figure things out. And even with as restrictive, and in terms of that's the word people use, even as I was diligent as I'm eating, Mercury still's having eczema flares and still itching, and so it's the reminder for me is yes, I feel uncomfortable when I see her discomfort because I want to be able to fix, right? We're told to fix. But then I yes and that moment and say, yes, she's uncomfortable. And I also understand that there is no magic wand as much as I'd love in this moment. It's really about what's giving her the least amount of things to be reactive to. So by having a more diligent food, sort of meal curation, on my end, I'm at least limiting the amount of things that could be adding to her discomfort. Especially now because we know that she got the past week I've been really navigating some emotions about she got prescribed a baby EpiPen, which means her allergist believes she could have an anaphylactic level reaction. So even though I've been someone who's been CPR and infant, first aid certified for over a decade, so I know how to use them. Now there's the reality that it could be my child. So then there's that other level of feeling like I have to over police if we're in public, of being like, I don't care how cute she is. And if she wants to eat your food, you can't give her your food, especially if you're not making sure it's not, having dairy, eggs, gluten, or peanuts in it, like, so that has been coming up. And so, it's also had led me to this curiosity point too, about how when it's in service of Mercury, it's so easy to change things. But when it was about my own body saying something had to change, or I wasn't feeling good with certain things I was eating, my mind didn't give any fucks about whether my body was consenting to how I was treating it, whether that's food or being sedentary and not moving, or it's saying yes to everything and taking a lot of stress. So this theme has been, sort of surfacing for me to reevaluate in the past week of how are we, or even are we allowing our bodies to consent to what our minds are deciding on? And so I'm like, love that you were willing to take us to this vulnerable place and to share that, because that's also something that I feel like that aspect of a nuanced relationship of, how we'll do something in service of someone else. And also curious about where did we learn in our sort of growing up process that we also shouldn't at least explore what that could, feel like to be making those decisions on what is the most supportive for ourselves as well.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is something similar, but not quite to those depths, was when I was trying to figure out my insomnia and I realized I had to cut out alcohol and caffeine. It was like, it kind of took me to a similar place in my mind. Like, okay, so life seemed like all the colors dulled, it went to monochrome. Like, what is there left for me? Like, what am I supposed to do? I want eating to be fun, and all these things, and it's that curiosity piece that you bring up in human design. I love that one of my superpowers, which everyone has superpowers, you have these channels of energy. I have the channel of curiosity. And so I love how you bring that up, because it helps me explore this even further. How can we bring in the curiosity piece of what else? And so it has taken me on this experimentation where I hope something will taste good and bring me that satisfaction hit that I was getting before. And there have been some duds, but it's been okay. Well, at least I know what doesn't work, and trying to just leave space available for not writing off that I'm never going to be happy again. Nothing's going to be the same or hit me the same way as these things that I'm having to be restrictive and cut out of my life. And that was another wonderful thing I found about the face revealing frenzy this week that I'm participating in. To be honest, I woke up like just feeling really crappy and defeated and okay, like what else? The second, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I love how you implement consistently a yes and philosophy. Yes, and like not me, it gives me permission to not judge myself for what it is that I'm feeling at all. Like there's no judgment. Yes, this is how I'm feeling. And there's a possibility. There's this hope that things will not stay the same. So I think in the times where I've had suicidal ideation in the past, it's where you feel your mind is convinced that this way that you're feeling in the moment is going to be that way forever. There is not going to be anything else. And so I love just leaving that door cracked open that, yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And there's a possibility that things can be different, and playing with it and not letting what you were feeling yesterday define in the moment, the now. So I'm just breathing into that in itself. I just feel so much freeing. And another thing that was so curious when you were talking about, you were thanking me for bringing up and being vulnerable about my experience in the past. You mentioned how the body is kind of like reliving and going into that place. I was like, oh shit. I had wondered why I was wringing my hands.
Oh,
because we started off this conversation relaxed and everything. And then I'm like, freaking, you can't see it underneath the table, but I was like,
do you want to play for a moment?
Yeah.
With that energy?
Let's do that.
This is so exciting. So just as one side note, when you bring it up, you have the channel curiosity. My only channel is a channel of awareness. So I just had this realization too, that this is what my favorite part of play dates is that if something is in my awareness at all, right, when I'm sharing it out, then that like to me is just me beingness, right? And then your energy, yes, anything the shit out of it, because your energy is this curiosity place. So, giving you something to be aware of. So as you were just saying, where I offered that moment of check-in of like, oh, well, your body's re-experiencing it, that awareness shifted. So now you're like, oh, I'm curious, what's this hand wringing? Yeah. Right. And so I want to share this activity that I call the emotional staircase, or emotional staircase if you're not an emoji person. Right. And so it's this sort of, I would say like a staircase, right? It's this evolution of emotions that we experience. So we're often told that we have to slingshot ourselves from what feels like our swampy basement up to like the beautiful, like what is it, bay window that has the porch outside, and we're Rapunzel letting out our hair, right? We're told we have to slingshot ourselves up to this emotional high that just doesn't exist for us in the moment. So this idea of the emotional staircase is, can we acknowledge what stair we're at? So this morning, for example, oh, my earring fell out. That's so funny. I was like, what's in my elbow crack? I was just like holding an earring. Well, no, so you're wringing your hands, right? If you had to put an emoji to it or an emotion of like what that feels like when you're at a place where you're wringing your hands, what would be, and we'll consider that being the basement that you were at in that moment.
It was, oh gosh.
And this is where the emoji, so you can make the face and then I'll just put words to it and you can correct me if you want, for since people will be listening to this, that I like that like element of play. Like, can Lori describe a face? No.
Maybe, okay, so my relationship with my body is not quite where I would want it to be. So I don't know if I can emote, but I have a better relationship with words sometimes.
Oh, do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in that moment, I felt at a loss because I love to fix things. I felt at a loss, like there was no solution. And that's what the wringing of the hands felt like to me, is like this tenseness, this yeah, it just
Yeah.
felt like I was being pulled, like I was in the middle and there was no solution. There was no win-win. And
So I'm
that's
seeing this visual of you putting on a hoodie, but not in a cozy way, in a like, I need to be less visible, but also saw this like Gumby figure of, but like being stretched out where it's like being pulled, like, so so
yeah.
from that, that's sort of like this sensory that I'm seeing, right? So from that place, what feels like it's one stair up to it. So it's the most minor shift. So instead of feeling all of that tension and pulled in multiple directions, what might it feel like to just have like 1%, like literally just the smallest shift?
So just to clarify, this is me being in that sense of me being like time warped back to this instance,
Mhm.
right? Of feeling like there were no answers and I just wanted to kind of like disappear. And yet I was being stretched in all these
Yeah.
places. What could I have done in that moment? Or what could I do if I'm in a similar situation?
Yeah.
Or are you
And what if the
asking,
pressure
body
isn't
was in
even,
that moment regardless?
yeah, what if it's not
Just
even the
now.
pressure that you have to do anything? Just what would relief feel like? What words might, you feel if you could take a breath suddenly? Like you took that breath, or once you realize you're wringing your hands today, what would it feel like to be able to unclasp your hands and maybe massage them instead?
I don't know what something that's coming up um would be guilt, is what I would be feeling in that moment. So if I could feel as though uh no guilt, like having the guilt lifted in that
Mhm.
situation, um that it wasn't on me.
Yeah. So I actually want to just offer this, like, if the basement, sort of like the bottom of the stairs, is that feeling of tension being stretched, the next stair can be guilt, because guilt means you're connecting to another, like a conversation is being started, right? Guilt at least means that your thoughts are able to have room to have a dialogue, right?
Mm.
So then perhaps the stair that's available after guilt is maybe a message that you saved and reread from someone, reminding, like you even modeled it to me. You said, this won't last forever. You said, I know you know this, in terms of me having a different diet for Mercury's needs. You said, I know you know this, but it won't last forever. Perhaps there's a message or something, like a favorite movie or a song or something that reminds you of that. And then that's something that you like sort of save somewhere that you can go. And then once you realize guilt is the experience you're having, then that's like a resource step, right? And that takes you to your next step. So maybe guilt is, oftentimes people say after guilt is shame, because then they're able to be like, okay, so I feel the guilt, but now I can name the shame. And so it's this interesting idea to think that I'm getting closer to the sort of the first level of my emotional like house with shame, but it's like we've been told to shame. Shame isn't something that we have to do. So it's again, it's allowing us to be animated. It's allowing us to not be on autopilot. Like, does that make sense in terms of like, we're told we shouldn't feel shame, but shame means that we're actually being more honest with ourselves. And then we're
Yeah.
shifting the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so eventually what could happen is, right, there's just this practice over time of realizing what some of your stairs are, and then you realize like, what's your baseline? That's why I think of it as going from the basement to the first floor. We don't have to get up to the rooftop bar where we're all like, yeah, like this best day ever, but just the feeling that our nervous system can have from going from what feels like our swampy basement just to like the first floor, where maybe we have a nice couch that we love in our living room, like that emotional feeling that might then be, oh, I feel a bit of ease, like I'm relaxing my jaw, I'm not wringing my hands, I can be available, when my child is asking me for yogurt, right? I'm not being like, nah, like I'm able to be like, you know what, I'm gonna have a yogurt too, let's just have a snack and be, whatever to be navigating your day looks like. I just like to play and offer that idea of the emotional staircase, because that is what yes anding in your body can feel like, right? So we can yes and our thoughts, and it's totally great that you connect with words because you can do it that way. But sometimes it's helpful to get curious about, okay, I'm feeling this like stuck in mud, like sort of leaded feeling in my body. What's any amount of shift? Maybe it's like, oh, actually, I want to put my hair up, or oh, you know what, I want to go ahead and stretch my neck. It's any amount of moving that energy, and then being like, oh, okay, I feel like I went up a stair. Or noticing, oh, well, someone told me that I need to try to meditate for 5 minutes, knowing that that's not a thing that works for you, and then you feel like you go down a few stairs. Can we just normalize that it is this experience, or this, it can be this relationship? So I know that was like not really tangent, but like
I also
went
wanted
to
to
a lot of
share
different places,
a
but
little
yeah.
anecdote about what happened just this morning. So I check in with my face as part of your face your feelings frenzy, and I select my emoji, which is me in a hamster wheel.
Mhm.
And I post that to my Instagram story. And then as part of the treat yourself part, I went to Starbucks to get a beverage, and I did it through the app. So this was going to be me treating myself. I was going to wait until I got home and take a picture of myself, through the time lapse, enjoying this cup of coffee. And so I placed the order through the app, and I go in and okay, so here's a little side bit. I have my name in the Starbucks app as Yo Mama, so that hopefully when people call out the drink, they're calling out Yo Mama. But I have found that it has backfired, because no one really wants to yell out Yo Mama unless they have a really great sense of humor. And unfortunately, not a lot of people do that. So anyway, I go in and pick it up, and I don't realize until after I've brought it home and tried the drink, and it's not like they did something weird to my drink. I look and I picked up someone else's drink, and I'm like, okay, I had to laugh at the craziness of it all, because here I am trying to make myself feel better and participate in this face your feelings and treat myself, and I don't even get what I want. I spend money and pick up someone else's drink. And so bringing in that guilt and shame part, I was like, not only did I mess up my day, I may have messed up someone else's day too, because they're going to probably be waiting for an order that's never going to show up. And anyway, so I was like, rather than try and feel guilty about that, I was like, well, maybe if they did take the drink, maybe they found a new favorite beverage, but more likely than not, it just got thrown away. But
or they even saw, if they did write Yo Mama on the cup, then they had a good lap, like what other possibilities could there be? Or maybe they even needed that disappointment moment to be able to realize, like, oh wait, I've been trying to hold my shit together for a couple of days, but really I'm at this tipping, I'm curious on whether there's room to play there about, and it's something that I'm experiencing lately too, of how much I've been overly trying to steward or cater to people's experiences and taking away their own ability to make decisions. Yeah. And so that's like the balance that I'm at, where I'm like, this languaging is coming through that I'm a self-ship steward. So I'm here to steward people through cultivating their self-ship, but also at what point am I also trying to be the pilot, And so being able to navigate that. But also I am not surprised at all that you would have an experience like that while going through the Friendsy, because it's almost like life giving this moment of like, oh, you want to yes and something? But I'm so glad you brought back, because I know you'd sent me a picture of it, but the fact that you picked the emoji of the hamster wheel, that I feel like was so reflective in that emotional staircase little session, or like that moment there of that feeling like being pulled in multiple directions, that tension point of things aren't going to alleviate, and going back to, your very real experience 10 years ago, I bet that felt like hamster wheel, right? And so sure, that could be a way that you're thinking that visual of how can a hamster wheel go upstairs? Wanted to just sort of bounce on this curiosity of, okay, well, is there a feeling of, instead of trying to run through it, can my arms go through at least? Can I touch the stair, or like, can I step out? Like, I think that sort of visual, I'm just curious on whether that can be something that we just sort of plant a seed and it can go away until you need it, of this curiosity of like, oh wait, I'm feeling like I'm on the hamster wheel. What do I know about hamster wheels? And then how can I get curious about how I want to explore sort of like the gymnastic dismount, right? Of like, what does stuck the landing feel like if I can get out of, even like next to the hamster wheel, like.
Well, you know what I thought you were going to reference is the card that you pulled with the snake eating its tail. And because that whole circular thing.
That was the next place. But then I was like, I've already been talking for like 5 minutes. But it is, no. And I'm so glad. See, and that's why like, I just love the, to me, the, being in community with someone and recording sessions does feel like a play date, because it is this like, no one had handed us a block and said you had to play with it this way, right? But yet we're still having these moments where things are coming together. And to me, it's like that is the whole energy of like what possibility is too. It's almost like you said, if you leave the door cracked just a little bit, sure, someone's told us that means a boogeyman can get in, but it also means that, like Leslie Knope can come in and give us 82 presents at once, because she has all of her calendar day, and we haven't seen each other. So she's like, here, I have all these gift wrap, like, yes. And like, yes, it can be something creepy as fuck. And it may be the exact thing that you didn't know you were waiting for, but you're like, oh shit,
One of the things that you mentioned, as you were talking about the card, was I guess it goes back to trying to curate other people's experiences and make sure that they're okay. It's just funny because our meeting, thankfully you were so sweet and kind to let us push our meeting back a little bit, because my first meeting went over, and that was where I was interviewing Dana Augustine for my podcast, and we were talking about aspects of my chart. And one of those that we had talked about just this morning was trying to make everyone else, people please and make everyone else okay. And my fear, how it's reflected in my chart, my fear of not being understood and communicating in ways that are cutting. And so by you saying what you did, maybe intuitively, about the whole communication aspect of it, I was like, of course, the universe just orchestrates everything so beautifully. And yeah, definitely playing with the idea of what if I don't care? I mean, not that I don't care, but just trusting that what I have to say and experience is okay.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like, I call them transformer moments, because I feel it in my body, like do, like all the puzzle pieces are coming together. So I just love you sharing that context for us all. And also this, the curiosity too is coming up for me about, oh my gosh, this happens. I start with these preambles and then I forget what I was going to say. Oh, April. It was so good. It wasn't meant to come out right now. Usually I can see it. It's like when you see a balloon that you let go of and it's flying in the sky and you're like, oh no.
What color is your balloon that's flying up?
Oh, okay. So it's the sort of greeny teal shiny color. It was heart shaped. It was a heart shaped one where I was like, no. But yeah, but with you sharing that out about communication, no, and I'm trying, it'll come back in like 10 minutes. I'll be like, oh, that's the thing. And then I'll be like, thank you, brain, for bringing it back. But I do, this isn't it, but another thing about how, like, we think about the sort of evolution of your morning, it even sounds energetically like you're having a staircase experience, right? Where there's just this different depth and breadth of things available. Like you start out in the morning, you're like, okay, I'm going to acknowledge them on this hamster wheel. Oh, I'm going to have a picnic. I'm going to go to Starbucks. You're probably like driving there and you're like, yeah, maybe you're listening to something, maybe you're not, but you're like, it's happening. And then you get your drink. You're like, this is going to be the best ever. Get home and you're like, oh shit, now I'm back 2 stairs. But then you go to your session and you're like, oh, I'm hearing things. I'm learning things. Maybe you shift a few stairs. And then I don't know what experience you're having now with me, but like, again, there's this ability.
I'm going down 3 stairs.
Yeah. And I hit my funny bone. But it's like, it can help us. it can help our mind and our body start to have this conversation of like even a similar topic, that what stare we might be on in a moment is not a stare that we're fixed to.
Right.
And I think that is where over time we can build the trust to be passing the microphone from mind to body. And then over time we realize that body is there to receive and hold our mind and to like catch
this
us.
brings up
The
something
spirit comes in. Yes.
I had wanted to mention about the body. Okay, so you know how in hypnosis sessions, people will sometimes channel their higher soul or their self through, or they'll connect with angels, etc. Well, this one lady that I know of, she's doing awesome stuff in the world. She was able to actually connect with her body consciousness. So the body, she hadn't realized this before, and I hadn't definitely I had not put language to it, but the body itself had its own consciousness, and it was able to communicate with her, and it told her its name. And so that whole practice, I have thought since then, what if because you were talking about getting the body's permission. Often we don't get the body on board for things that our mind has decided are good ideas, right? Yeah. And we kind of, maybe without even realizing it, we kind of traumatize the body further by not listening to it and making it go along with things that it's not really fully on board with yet. So I was thinking about how much more gentle would I be with my body if I were to name it, and ask, do you like this? Do you like this? So for instance, the case that's coming up is I have recently started dry brushing. I have realized, I had heard from a medical astrology podcast that for one of my rising sign, I think it was, the dry brushing was a good idea. So I started doing that and just naming my body consciousness and asking, is that too rough? Or, do I need to be a little bit more gentle? Just checking in and kind of, because like you said, we can treat other people so much better than we can treat our own bodies. So if we can, I don't think you even have to channel and connect with that consciousness per se on a spiritual level, on a 5D level. You can just maybe name your body something and then have this dialogue with it and ask, like, what are you actually feeling like? Because we take our own selves for granted so often. And I think our bodies feel resentful about it.
No, I'm so glad you shared that, because it helped me connect a lot of dots that are giving me different language to play with for some practices that I have, that when they just sort of started, I was like, oh, I guess we're doing this. Like they just sort of came to be. And one of them is so Petty Miss Prime is about to come out. That's my not an alter ego, that's my other part. And so I used to have only a self-deprecating sense of humor, and it was coming from a place of, well, I'm going to talk about it first, so if you talk about it, it doesn't hurt me. Now it comes from a place of, this is part of my lived experience, and I find that laughing with myself is actually one of the greatest ways that I can be with myself and hold space for other people. So that being said, I would always tell people that like my boobs were backwards. So like my back boobs would fill up a bra, but my front boobs wouldn't, right? And my front, like I just have elbows, like I just have like, and I've been so many different weights and shapes and sizes, and yet my boobs are just not, even now brushing, like I say now, instead of a lowercase a, I'm an A finally, like my uppercase A, like I just do not have front boobs, right? But my back, and it's not like love handles, it's like my middle back has just always carried so much weight. And so as I started even considering, like, you can have a relationship with your body, what's that? One of the things that came up was I started to get curious about, like, why is weight storing in the places it's storing in my body, simply because it doesn't seem to be cohesively sort of going. And then again, I even had that idea that, oh, well, it's supposed to go everywhere evenly, right? So, I just was from that place of like, well, why in this part? And so at that time I was speaking with a friend. Her episode was a few weeks ago on death is not an emergency. She's a death doula doing really amazing Scorpio work. And so she was starting to sample out some of her sessions, and she wasn't sure what she wanted to do in business at that time. And so we were talking about death, but what came up for me is grief, and realizing I never actually grieved anything in my life, because all the things that I needed to grieve, I didn't know I was allowed to grieve. It wasn't like, sure, the large things of losing someone or, things like that. Like I thought like, oh, okay, I was sad for a day, that's it. But there were so many smaller to outside people moments that were huge to me that I'd never grieved. And so I realized, and then I was in the shower that night and I was like, oh my gosh, these are my grief gallons. Because what I realized is that the times in life where that part of my back they're like literally swollen, like bigger. It's when I'm not shifting through energy, when I'm not actually acknowledging my grief or expressing that. And so even to this day, I can tell if I'm starting to just feel more weighed down in that area of my back, I'll have that moment to check in and be like, how have I been bypassing past what my body actually needs me to be processing? Can I put my mental attention there to allow the thoughts and the words to come up and start expressing it? Or can I just start a therapy session with my therapist and just be like, so I just need that, like, I don't know what's going to come up, but I can tell that something is, something's lurking and I don't want it to lurk anymore, like whatever that looks like. But it was that first curiosity. And that's when I started to actually be much gentler to my body in terms of, especially with like my thoughts towards it. Cause I was just like, oh, you're literally like doing the very best you can. And I'm not giving you much to work with in terms of the decisions and choices I'm making. So I love that you bring up. So now I am curious and I want to spend some time, for the next few days playing and like sort of letting that body consciousness name come out. And not just have that sort of like partialized areas, like, sure, that's great. I love that my grief gallons and I now have this relationship, but I'm just super curious and I really appreciate you sharing that out, because it also, there's a practice called social presencing theater. And so it's this breath awareness practice. I was able to do a few courses with it a few years ago. And it was right when I first was realizing energy work was a thing. I was trying to be kinder to my body. It was like one of those sort of like, I knew a decision had to be made. So I was just trying anything. And so it's essentially, I'm like not speaking to this in terms of how the creator, and I will put that in the show notes because I'm blanking on her name, but she's a Japanese woman and has a dance background. And so is this idea of how actually like breathing in and allowing your body to share out its landscape, so to speak. And or at least that this is how I experience it. And so I've sort of over time adapted it or like practiced it in the way of having it be a way that I check in with my body of where am I storing the most stress, and then asking what parts of my body around it have some capacity to take the load. So for me, it's saying like, oh, my whole body's a team. If I'm feeling I'm still storing all the stress in my stomach, can I say, hey, spine, can you take a little bit? Or hey, butt cheeks, what are you doing today? And so I actually then be sending breath to those other areas and I can feel that pressure alleviate. And so I just wanted to share that out as in case that's of interest to anyone, of that idea of what do we do with this awareness now that our body can communicate? Because what Face Your Feeling Frenzies is sort of leading up to is that sort of like the sort of on-ramp energetically to Yes and Yesterday, which is a mini course that is about how do you build in these very short but accessible and supportive practices for checking in with your body, spirit, and mind. And it's using that variation of social presencing theater breath work of being able to notice where your body is storing stress or what part of your body is asking for the microphone but being like, like shouted over the loudest. And then being able to see how your body is this ecosystem and starting to share out some of that. So it's not all pooling in one place, right? Because that's what my grief gallons, like I really someone just like, we're literally carrying all the load, because without this grief being expressed, you're not able to be feeling all of this other range of emotion that you have during your life, right? And so we're only feeling this, like your mind may not be registering it, but your body is only feeling the weight of this grief. I know that was a really long thing,
No,
but
I love that. I just wanted to give a shout out to the woman who is the first one I knew of that actually was able to communicate with her body's consciousness and name it. Her name's Becky Nevin, and she was a guest on my podcast. But this development happened after that, so I haven't had her back on the show to talk about it. But people can check out her website. But I just thought it was interesting that this realization or this encounter with her body consciousness happened because of weight as well. That weight was the impetus. She had been struggling with weight for a long time, and it hadn't been an issue up to like a certain point. And then after that, no matter what she did, she couldn't, get rid of it. And by her being able to, so then in a hypnosis session, when she was introduced to this body consciousness and started developing this relationship, I wish I could remember what the body consciousness said its name was, but by developing that going forward, she's able to ask her body questions and, really receive answers. It's amazing. So I just want to give a shout out to her and point out that the similarity there was weight. And I'm interested because most of my weight, I guess I have been lucky in that none of my weight shows up like usually in my face or my arms, my upper torso. And so it seems like I'm relatively skinny, but it all kind of in my lower abdomen, like my belly area. And so I don't know what that's about. So maybe I need to like touch in, connect and see what's going on there. But like I'll wear clothes that are loose fitting. And so it kind of covers, it's straight. And so it kind of covers whatever belly and hips that I have going on there. But yeah, I haven't gotten curious enough to really ask what's going on with that. But
well, and you're bringing up a point without bringing it up. I'm saying you're reminding me of this. So I'm not saying that you're saying this. You're bringing up to my awareness something too that I still am in this tango with, that, first asking my mind what I've been told about bodies. What's a good body? What is my body supposed to do or supposed to look like? And then I pass that narrative through my body. How do you actually feel knowing that that's the way, those are the expectations that we're holding you to? So even the thing is like, and this idea that, we're told in society and expected, especially as people socialized as female, that our bodies are never supposed to change. We're supposed to change our lives all around and cater and nurture everybody, bring people into being, nurse them, do all these things, but we're never supposed to visibly change to show that there's a lived impact to that experience, right?
Oh my gosh, I'm glad we're talking about this because this came up to my attention within this past week. And I had this moment. I think it was after a shower or whatever. I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was pregnant, and I noticed that overnight my breasts had dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And I waited a while to get pregnant. I was 30. I got married when I was 20 and I didn't have my child until I was 30. So it wasn't just age. It was the fact that these hormones, just by being pregnant, were coming into my body and like loosening everything up. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh my God, this sucks. But yeah, what are the options, the alternatives? Get breast implants, like all these things that cost money and come with a lot of different risk. I'm following this lady on Instagram who's been very vulnerable and transparent with her journey of having her breast implants removed because her body was rejecting them, and supposedly it's, safe and it happens all the time, but
it goes back to that conversation earlier about if we ask our body's consent before we make these very mental decisions,
and
what else is
sometimes it's okay
possible?
with it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. This is by no means to say that means you never get to do what you want, but it's just like, is that ever a part of our process? Because I sure as hell, if I'm on the basement, if I'm in my swampy basement and I'm like, ooh, do I want to go have this whole like pan of brownies with extra whipped cream? My body's like, do it, get us out of the swampy ass basement, and then it's like, you can't eat it fast enough, right? But it's like, but is there ever that practice, or do we even have access to that being an option, right? And so when you were describing even the type of clothes you wear, I have these moments where now, I mean, like literally my only criteria is like, can I get my titty out fast? Because, like when Mare's hungry, so I'm like the lowest maintenance person. So I'm like, if I can't pop a boob out as fast as possible, I'm not wearing it. So I have like 5 tank tops and 3 muumuus, and we just rotate through that. And, if I brush my hair that week, we are living very glamorously. But other times, my body, my relationship with my body, and the way that I was like thinking of, I have to package this, I have to contain it, right? And so once I realized that's what I was doing, I got curious about what the layers were there. And I realized that part of it was that seams are very sensory overloady to me. If I can feel like a pant seam and it feels like it's digging in somewhere, or the worst was when I would have to put like a long sleeve shirt under a jacket, like in the wintertime as a kid, and my mom would be like, bundle up. Like I hated if the seams in it. And that's part of being neurodivergent and having sensory overload, right? I could feel seams in places. So there was both this aspect of it doesn't feel good on my body to have certain things on. And also I've been told that I have a body that should be covered. So it's like I'm in these moments of being like, how can I hold space for the fact that both of these things are valid in terms of how I'm experiencing them? And then what choices do I want to make from there? And sometimes the choice is like, I have this aesthetic that I see in my mind of fashion and clothes I would love to have. And yet I've like never seen it at a price point that I can afford, or for a body shape like mine, or anywhere that's not like in a movie, right? Like I just don't even know where to get it. So there's just like, this way that I feel like I also dampen down my self-expression because I don't feel like I have the tapestry to share out what I want to share too, and so I know that there's some people doing really clever, amazing work about, like how your body is a canvas in terms of like being able to actually express yourself with fashion. But, they're bringing up the fact that, like commodification and price point, like it's not accessible to everyone. So, more and more I'm getting curious. I'm like, what do I actually want to share out? And then having this sort of like somber candle visual moment of like, and then I hear the Sarah McLachlan ASPCA commercial song. I'm like, I don't have access to how I want to express myself. And then sometimes that means I stay in the swampy basement because I'm like, fuck, I just really want to be able to play a different character today. And then other days I'm like, well, what do I have that's close, and holding both space for both of those and anything in between.
One of the things I wanted to go back to is you were talking about the pan full of brownies, and I think this was the point that you were making, and I wasn't following exactly in real time, but I was circling back to it. I think what maybe you were saying is that by not bringing our bodies online, when I check in and I like definitely want to eat the whole thing, I'm tempted to believe that that's my body talking, saying it wants that whole thing, when I'm having this realization moment that's probably my mind saying that I need this. When if I actually check in with my body, no, it doesn't need 1.5 pounds of processed sugar.
Yeah, well,
it wants to walk out in sunshine, but it's my mind wired and programmed, and all these 40 years worth of ads that I've seen that are telling me certain things.
That's helpful for me to play with because I'm a grazer. I would much rather eat bites of food throughout the whole day than sit and just have like 1 or 2 fixed meals. Like if I'm moving a location from room to room, then I'm someone who's like, okay, what bite? And so before I had to change a lot of my diet, for breastfeeding and Mercury, I was like living off of these. Aldi had these Reese's Piece peanut butter cookies. And Nate was calling them dinner cookies. My husband was, because I was just living off of them because it was like salty, sweet, and all things. Like, look, it has protein. My body's telling me like I need. So like I both knew that. And it was because it was accessible. When you're a first time new parent and you're body feeding and you're like, I just like these waves of just like insatiable hunger would just come and go. So I'd be like, I need something immediately. And so like it was meeting my needs totally. And also I could then tell when suddenly my brain was still wanting them, because I'd eat one or two and be like, oh, these don't taste like, I wasn't getting the bodily like, oh, yay moment. And so that's when I would like go a week or two without buying any. And then I would notice, okay, well, I'm not getting enough protein or whatever it was. Like I could tell that there was this, like hard to decipher up here communication happening to my body and my mind where, to your point, I could tell when my mind was like, oh, buy some more. And then I'd even be like, oh, they don't taste that great. And then I would, after a couple weeks, be like, oh, I want them and that'd be great. So it was both helpful to notice and like allow myself to give that time to like in between to not get them. And then also to that point, if you're bringing up the brownie point, like there are totally days where the answer is like, go ahead, rage on those brownies. And then I'll also notice, and it has been helpful after 2 or 3 of them, re-asking that question, right? Because what if my body doesn't have a unit of measurement to know what I mean by all the brownies, right? Like, is this like, oh, is this a 16-ounce package? Like, no, like, so then checking in, being like, oh, wait, now I'm starting to tell I'm getting a sugar headache, or I'm getting these things. Okay, cool. Now outside, like you mentioned. Yeah. Going outside. Right. And I think that sort of expectation that we really learn in society, that's really part of whiteness consciousness, is this like, and it's like you have to be one or the other. Like there's not nuance for multiple things. And so it's like, if something is a yes at one point, it has to always be a yes. It's like, no, that can change. So your point, like checking back in, and with you talking about breast implants and removal, I've seen a few people recently, I'd say in the past year or two, of getting them removed for those points. And I remember one person sharing out that it took them a really long time to decide to get them because they wanted to make sure that it was coming from a place of, it feels like the best choice for me and not because of pressures. And then also them sharing out of the emotional layers they're going through now, realizing that what was the right choice for them 5 years ago is no longer the right choice. And then going through and making that, decision to get them removed. And I think that feels like a really poignant example of like, we can ask our body and our spirit or mind of these things, and something might be all right for now. And I think we are given this false expectation that something has to be forever to have been a wonderful experience or the right thing for us. And, I especially see this with people who are navigating divorce or ending long-term relationships, friendships, working relationships, where it's like, it doesn't mean that everything's a failure. What if we can shift to this place of, it's just no longer the supportive option?
Going back to the snake eating its tail, it's all cyclical. I mean, it's not a straight line. It's definitely, especially when it comes to relationships transitioning, that's where, it's where the rubber hits the road. Lori, can I ask to cash in my brownie points for something?
Yes.
Okay. So I heard you do this with a prior guest, and I wanted to do it too. That's where, I guess you have numbers on a.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What's so funny? Let me show you, April. I just looked down and realized I wrote down my numbers, and then I was just like, oh my gosh, we didn't do that.
Okay, cool.
So you would like to cash in your brownie points for a Improviding play date on the Improviding Life podcast. That is not an unachievable request. It's so funny. I just moved because I realized I kept putting my pen in the place where I was covering it. So like it's AHE out of sight, out of mind. And then I just moved it and I was like, oh my God, they're right there. Oh, talk about our energy. See, our spirits are, I think of our spirits as sort of like marionettes, but not in like a controller, but just like there's the tendrils going and dancing, and they're sort of like, oh, can we link up? And they were just like, hey y'all, can we get together? All right, so I'm going to tell you when I start doodling, and then you let me know when to stop doodling, and then whichever number we're pointed at, that'll be where we play.
Okay, perfect.
So, actually, I would like you to make the sound that you would make when someone actually says yo mama at Starbucks to call out your name? What sound would you make? Like your happy sound? That'll be how you start. And then I'll start doodling, and then you make it again. And that'll be when I stop doodling.
Okay. So the sound I wanted to make in this moment was like, woo.
Okay.
And then I'll do it again. Woo.
All right. 5.
Oh, I love the number 5. In numerology, it's one of, it's the number of change. It's the number of adventure. So I love that.
Well, this is, see, it's all coming together as I randomly sing for no reason. My body just does that sometimes. So it's not for no reason. All right. Are you ready? I want to hype this up. All right. Tool number 5 is one that I'm currently like, I feel like this is the theme of life the past year, is build versus invent. So for a quick recap, it's this idea that we can often be stuck in invention mode of thinking we have to create from nothing, that everything has to be new, everything has to be shiny, nothing is supported, right? Everything has to have some revelationness, right? And it's about getting curious about what do we already have that we can build with? Like knowing when there's been enough invention that yes, there's there's a world we're creating to play with. And then how can we start allowing those to be building blocks? So for just like one tangible example might be, so already we started this podcast in Invention Zone. We didn't know what we were going to talk about, right? It's not like it was scripted and we had people writing for us. We've already talked about a range of things from possibility to our body, food, being in a hamster wheel, going on stairs, getting the wrong order at places, eating a whole pan of brownies, a lot of food themes today. No, and also like going outside and naming our body. Like all of those are now building blocks, right? If we kept the pressure, if we had to invent, then it would feel like there was no through line for this episode, right? We want to be having these circle back moments that are happening really naturally. So that shows us that we've already been building, right? So that's the idea for in case you hadn't heard of that, and in case anyone listening hadn't heard me talk about build versus invent. So you had mentioned earlier that you're feeling like you're sort of newer into your body relationship, right? And that like words can often sometimes come earlier than sort of having that body association, and the fact that you're super, super rad and courageous and playing with the Face Your Feelings Friendsy this week, right? That's showing
those were my
that
exact words.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And so you're in this space of learning, of exploring what a body relationship could be. So I'm curious about this idea. So I'm whether or not having a body relationship has felt less accessible because there was this feeling or mental thoughts or expectation that you'd have to invent it from scratch. Like I don't have one at all. So how do I even start?
Okay. So are you asking me if that feels true?
Have you ever had that feeling, or based off of what you assume? Let's start this. What's your definition of a body relationship? How is that even sort of being presented to you?
Well, this is prompting a memory of the reason why I got into Reiki at all. I took Reiki level 1 is because I had listened to a podcast in which this person was giving her testimony in a way of how she was living from the mind in this mental space and really had no connection to her feelings or her body, and that Reiki was that bridge, and it was very healing and transformative, changed her whole life. And so that's why I had gotten into Reiki as well and taken the class, was with that hope of it doing the same thing for me. So my definition of having a mind body relationship, or a relationship with my body, would be able to, well, without judging it before I say it, whether it's right or wrong, would be to name what it is that my body is experiencing it. And in that way, acknowledging it.
So what we'll do now is play for a bit with some energy, and that's going to be the building block, right? So we're going to play with that.
Lori, I would just say that because I feel as like it hasn't been safe to really be in my body in
Mhm.
certain times in my past. And because of that, it's been much safer to be in my head. Whether that was like reading something or trying to forget something, it didn't really feel safe to be, really in my body. So,
Well, I want to just affirm to you that that is always, always, always an option available. I feel, meaning being in our head.
mhm.
We are so often, especially once you're in the space of quote, quote, wellness or healing or energy, right? That suddenly our mind has to be the bad place and we should do everything to not be there, right? We should only be embodied, right? And that is so bypassing and doesn't account for the fact that for many of us, if we didn't have our mind as an option, we may not still be here.
That is so true. I'm glad I interrupted you
Oh,
because
please do. Please do. Yeah.
I needed to hear that. So thank you.
And so, even with this idea of playing, we don't have to be in your body to play. We can play with our minds. We can totally do that because for me, and I mentioned earlier, and I want to acknowledge that this was not something always accessible for me. And it's still something that I have to actively remind myself from this mental place that it's an option, right? Is that idea of like, I used to think and just say, like, I'm a walking head. I mean, now I have language of human design. Oh, I only have head and ashna. Cool. That's why I feel most of my energy here. That's one layer of it. But also, my body has been, for much of my life, the bane in my existence, it was what brought me harm from other people. It was the way that I internalized and harmed myself. It's the way that I compare myself to others. It's the way that I decided what was or wasn't possible for myself because the outside voices became inside false truths, right? And so 3 years ago, even, I want to say 5, but even 3 years ago, if someone were to say, you're going to be talking about having a body relationship, I would have probably punched him in the throat. I have a very different relationship with my anger now, but I would have literally just started a fight because that would have not only felt just untrue, just a flat out like you're actually on drugs and not even the kind you're sharing, right? Like you're just somewhere else, right?
Mhm.
And also, no way in hell that would feel safe or accessible. Why would I even entertain that? And so earlier in our chat today, I mentioned something like, what if my body is here to receive my mind so my mind can take a moment and have a breath, right? That experience, when that first happened, I had like a fight, flight, fawn, freeze moment where I was like, fuck, why? Who, what, were in my head? Like, it was both this feeling of a reunion where my body was like, finally, we're able to just be one for a moment. And my mind was like the crabs in the bucket or whatever. It's like just calling out, like pulling each other down, just like, no fucking way are we going to go in here. Absolutely not. And so this idea, this energy of build versus invent was that I felt like I would have had to invent a relationship with my body. And to an extent, I did. I had to reinvent one that felt like it was mine, accessible for me, felt supportive for me, that was on my terms. But through that process, what I realized was that inside my body and my spirit, right, had these tiny building blocks that they remembered from when I was not even in this lifetime, perhaps, or baby, like before big T trauma started happening, right? This remembrance of we used to be able to be an ecosystem that felt supported by each other. And so it was almost a sensation of my body, my spirit reaching out in the gentlest way of like this nudge of like, hey, we're just here if you need us. And it was once I was finally able to have my mind even entertain this idea of passing the microphone that I realized it wasn't all invention, right? I have to do all the resentimenting, reinventing, and that happens through processing what had happened in my lived experience. But I realized like, oh shit, my body has been doing the best it can in terms of just getting me to another day. You know, my spirit squad, they've been doing the best that they can to get me to another day. And so there was suddenly this shift of, I have to start from nothing to, how can my mind know that what it's the expert of my lived experience. It knows exactly how I've experienced what I've experienced and what that's felt like. And what would it be like if my body has my back?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So to me, like this whole tag team approach, I could really see that visually, like just the mind exhaling and just relaxing into the body, like home. I'm home, and then it kind of being a marriage of sorts where sometimes you pick up the slack for the other, and then there are times where you can co-create together something really beautiful. They make love.
Yeah.
There's something really beautiful. And then other times, when one part's kind of not doing so well, the other one can pick up the slack. And just having that trust, and the, again, the word balance keeps coming up for me.
And I'm curious, is there also room and okayness to be like, you need to go have a day with your friends, right? Like, we need some time apart to just breathe and then come back together and have things to talk about, right? You know, can that be the option too? Right. And so, and with that too, you know, of like what you're sharing out about, of you saying it's a marriage of sorts, I feel like a lot has become possible for me when I've realized that there's so many more relationships in the world than what I've told I'm allowed to be in relationship with, which is just like one other person in one other way. And, you know, that was part of that sort of, because it is this feeling of my mind, like of actually easing into my body. And it's almost like when you sit into a beanbag chair and you're kind of like, am I the chair now? Right. Like, yes, you can peel yourself out of it and get up, but you know, there's that moment, or like when your head's on your pillow just right, you know, like there's just like, you know, that also became possible because I was like, the idea of relationship came in, of like, how can we actually be relating with each other, you know? And yeah, so I know I just did a lot of talking, and I'm curious about how your mind is feeling. Like, what if your mind was sort of a battery, how is it feeling charge wise? Is it like the fan's humming because it's too hot? Is it feeling like it's rested? Like, how? Because that's one way that we can sort of start is asking.
It's relieved, actually, in that it feels like maybe it's on a charger.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's one of those rechargeable batteries, in that there's a cradle. And I know from our conversation today that I don't have to, my mind doesn't have to carry it all. And that I have this cradle in which I can recharge should I need it, which is my body.
I want to share something with you. It's something that came out when I was cueing. So at the end of my yoga teacher training, one of our final aspects was co-facilitating with one of our peers and sort of swapping a session. And that person had shared with me a really beautiful way that you had shared with me, you know, this, like, let's just be honest that my body does not feel like it's a place that is accessible at times for all of the reasons, you know, that they're mentioning. And intuitively, I ended up cueing the class, and something came through as like what I call now the power of perhaps. And what I had shared with them was like, what if there's a 1-800-PERHAPS line, right? And you're saying, perhaps I'm calling my stomach today. How are you doing? Does it want to answer? Do I want to answer it? Or maybe my stomach's calling, hey brain, I have an order. And you're like, I don't have capacity. And so what they ended up sharing was how permission giving that felt for them to feel like they had ownership of how they decided to relate with their body or not in that moment. And a few weeks later, they shared back that they were still able to use that idea perhaps to create the space to be tending to and nurturing their body with the hope over time that it would start to feel like it was theirs again. And
because
so
let me say the word perhaps there, that translates to me freedom. It translates to choice. And that's why sometimes, like, the body hasn't felt safe in the past is because it didn't feel like there were options, whether that's poverty or whatever was happening externally. It didn't feel like as though there were any choices. And so just with that, perhaps all of a sudden it's like, to me, that's everything, having an option.
And to the point of having the option, one of the Loriisms that I have in my own mind about the feeling that I would love for my service in the world to be is access to choice and choices you want to make, right? Because we're often told you always have a choice, but the choice is like get punched in the face or get kicked in the face. Oh, cool choice. But I want neither of those. Neither of those are helpful or supportive, like the hustle more and keep working for everything. Like none of that feels supportive or good, or I like just fuck off, right? And so for me, it's like the playground I want to play in the world is how do we create a society and an ecosystem where there's access to choices that we want to make, trusting that looks different for everyone. It's not about homogenization. It's totally about knowing that, or like, what if there were actual, like it's just the power, perhaps, like it can look so many different ways. And I think that's oftentimes the fact that it's not like this one concrete thing that we're like, oh, it has to look like this, that's why people are like, oh, it's not possible. But the one concrete thing we can point to that we have right now doesn't work. It's not feeling good. And so with that idea of when I felt like that was me intuitively feeling like I want to share the idea perhaps with you. What I was seeing was this visual of your elbows. So it's like, I can't even see them on camera, but like, can that be, ding, 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 ding. Can that be a place of just curiosity? Your elbows want to be a play date with you. Can it be something where throughout your day, as silly as it sounds, hey, elbow, perhaps we'll do this or that? And, give it choices, right? And see, like, what does your elbow want? If you're typing, does your elbow want to be rested on your desk or free flowing or on your lap or up like this, like whatever that is? And because oftentimes I feel like for me now I have language for it, and I don't think I had it until this moment. What felt so unapproachable about my body was this idea that a body relationship meant it had to be inside my body. And because trauma lives inside my body and the way that I was harmed included inside of my body, thinking about externally, how can I have a relationship outside of my body? That actually, I'm realizing now, was that curiosity of the door being cracked. It was, oh, my neck feels tense. Can I just massage it? Oh, I haven't moisturized my face in a decade. Can I put on some dollar store crappy lotion that I know will probably break me out, but it's what I have here? Can I perhaps I just do that to see what that feels like as my face goes, because it's been like in a desert for 5 years, right? But like, what becomes possible when we're calling 1-800 perhaps, and it's the outside part of our body? Does that at all shift our experience if we're not thinking of we have to be in our body first? It's like, can we be with our body externally? Can we be with it? And then once we're building, right? Because then, we might have to invent some practices of how we can be with our body. Then suddenly we have building blocks, and those might become doors that open to be in our bodies.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that's what was happening by just giving your body consciousness a name and interacting it with that point of view. It is somewhat still externalizing it. It's kind of like a building block, though, to that point where you're able to then maybe fully from within your body. But yeah, I love the power of perhaps. And one of the things that has been coming into my podcast feed and awareness and stuff is where the real power comes from emotion. And so whenever my version of prayer comes, when I will allow myself to do that, perhaps, and allow myself to envision what a scenario I would want to see, and then allowing myself to color within the lines, those feelings. And I really do feel that that's where energetically things shift, like on invisible levels, is when we're allow ourselves to imbue, our perhaps with emotions. And I think because that's when we're able to, it kind of creates the, like in the snow, it kind of shovels the pathway for us to take those steps forward.
No, I love that so much. And I just went back to and restarred something that I started with when you said it earlier. So now you have 2 stars. Do whatever with that that you want. 5 more brownie points. You had shared that in that experience of when you were first changing your relationship with food, or with or perhaps it was when when you were saying for your insomnia that you removed alcohol and caffeine, and you said all the colors dulled. So what I'm hearing now is you actually having these building blocks, this sense making that you've been able to have, this processing that you're doing, this self-awareness that you're supporting yourself through by sharing out that you have this prayer visioning practice, and that you're really emoting your perhaps, right? And in that, the dull colors become vivid again, or more vibrant, or just again possible.
Yeah.
So it's like perhaps makes possible. I don't know if that's grammatically like translating.
Perhaps makes possible.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Is that our title? Did we just stumble upon our title?
Ooh, perhaps.
Yeah. 49 more brownie points for a pen. Dun dun dun. Yay. No. Well, and on the point of brownie points, oh my gosh, now my brain is like, tell
Brownies. I think
jokes.
that's what
Yeah.
we just need more brownies is the answer.
We are now sponsored by brownies, not one brand, just every brownie in the world now sponsors us. So, but on that, I wanted to do a check-in with you. You had requested a sort of vouchered cash in of brownie points, and we doodled out and got build versus invent. But I want to know honestly, right? This is, remember, Sea Serpent, this is not about saying the right thing or being understood at all.
Ooh.
Okay, let's just give that permission. Perhaps you'll be able to share with me from an accurate location. Do you feel like you've redeemed your brownie points for something, or would you like to recollect your brownie points for another time?
I want to recollect my brownie points because in a way you mentioned that we were going to kind of do that anyway. And so I felt like I redeemed them too early and I was cheated out of my brownie points. So I want them back. Please.
Okay. And can I thank you though for advocating for an experience that you wanted, which was reminding me, hey, move your pen, Lori, so you can see that there was this sort of divination process or experience that we were going to have by doodling that out. So you can totally have your brownie points back. And I just had this feeling of like, I want to check in, because there was this feeling of, it's the same feeling as you went to Starbucks thinking you're going to have one drink and it's not what you got. Right. And so what I want to give you the open invitation for is maybe in a few weeks or a few months, as you play with the power of perhaps sort of revisiting, it does not have to be on the podcast recorded, but revisiting and then having, this mini shit shifting session of, once it starts to feel more accessible to either be with your body externally or in your body, to play with tool number 5, a build versus event, and take something through your energy system that way. Because what I was doing, and I don't know if you could feel or tell, it's totally fine if again you can be like, you just made that up, Lloyd, whatever that is. But I was trying to keep it just sort of head and asana, and almost to your shoulder, like head, shoulders, but not worrying about knees and toes, right? Of just, let's talk about build versus event and bring in ways that, and perhaps came through is that as a way to have there be a next step without actually taking your energy through your body, because I did not want to do that, because that wasn't something you were consenting to. So I was hoping to just create enough room sort of in your head and neck region to, again, it's like, I don't know if you ever played the game Kerplunk, where it's like you have to pull out it's like a lava lamp shape, but there's sticks going through it and there's marbles up top, and you pull out sticks. Where it's like, I just wanted to loosen up some of those, so then that way on your own time, if you ever choose to, then there's less sort of knots to untangle for your body to be able to receive your mind, if at all you wanted to.
Yeah, the whole the words bill and event kind of bring up to mind to me, like how so many times in the past I have expectations, and I think we're told like expectations are wrong, But I think part of us, like human beings, we have certain expectations. And I have felt so disappointed time and again about things not meeting, the expectation or what it was billed to be. The actual event didn't meet the bill. And so I don't know if that's part of my Scorpio rising as well, but I've had plenty of times where I will leave space mentally for perhaps this will go sour, like perhaps someone won't come through, perhaps someone will disappoint me, and that type of thing. So
April, do you know how many things I have not done in life because I'm already thinking of this, like I call it pre-grief, right? This anticipatory dread of all the things I'll have to then manage and fix after. And I'm so glad you said you're Scorpio rising, because when you mentioned body brushing earlier and how my be rising sign, it's like, well, I'm a Scorpio rising. And I'm really remembering now how at this one point in life, I was fixated on getting a body brush, and then I got it and then never used it and forgot about it. And now I want to go find ADHD, what's happening. But I'm feeling now like this is like, oh, let me go find that body brush and I'm going to try this too.
Well, I have enjoyed this conversation because the perhaps can go both ways. It doesn't have to be a perhaps it will all go to shit. It can be a perhaps things will, work out. Let's play. Let's get curious.
Yeah, perhaps it'll go to shit and I have a shovel. Right? Ding ding. Don't have to pick it up with my hands.
I have friends like Lori who can not judge me for it and will help me. They'll pick up a shovel too and start helping me dig my way out.
Excavate that shit mountain that I think we all have inside of us. That's just all that energetic residue buildup that we're never told we're allowed to shift through. And also is like really hard to want to access it, because then again, it's like with why I thanked you, and I'm going to thank you again for sharing earlier about your experience with you, when your child was first born too. It's going back, because it's like that does take our body back to that moment of like, this is still very real, because it is part of our lived experience. And oftentimes I think and the wellness, whatever that means, and however you define that, the wellness world or energy worlds, it's really talked about that we have to, the goal of doing any kind of healing work, internal work, is to just sort of banish away these parts of ourselves so that way we can act like everything's squeaky clean. And I really just get curious about, like, perhaps there's an option where it's actually about, like, literally, as you were saying, like naming your body consciousness, but also it's more of this like integrating of like, oh, you're holding the heaviest part of the weight for our lived experience. And I think that sort of like with the social presence theater and the sort of adaptations of that breath practice that I practice is like, let's pass the load some. I have a little bit of capacity over here. I see that your back's hurting, right? So to speak, under the weight of that, let's share that out. And I think that could be, what if that was the sort of intention that we had with a relationship with our body, spirit, and mind, is like, there's just not one aspect of ourselves that has to do everything. Because, something that's becoming more clear to me over the past month or two is that's why adulting sucks so much ass, is because we're supposed to be doing it from just this mental place and totally not having the support or the feedback or a way to check in with how that's impacting our body and our spirits. So saying like, hey, people, I want adults to play more, like, what if life was a play date? How the fuck does that feel accessible if, your only experience is from this mental place? Because then it doesn't fit into, oh, this doesn't help me check off a box anywhere. Yeah. And so like, I totally get that that's going to be one of those sort of energetic mountains that I'm navigating, with being more seen, so to speak, and saying, hey, people, I'm open for business, so to speak, I'm here to be of service, is both validating that, like, I totally get why the last thing you think you need is a play date. And also that's exactly why this idea of playing more is really, like, to me, play is the expression of perhaps. It's the practice of perhaps.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Didn't you? No. Oh, well, April, I'm just looking at the time and I realized I have, like, sort of said, you're not leaving at all for a while, April, but we are here and we've been in this moment. And I realized I was writing play is practice. I meant to put up perhaps, but I put play is a practice of April. So take with that what you one. I wrote that.
Yeah, I feel like in this discussion I had earlier with Dana, we were talking about how Saturn has a huge role in my chart, and it's all about responsibility. And that has been my calling here recently, is to remember how to play, and not necessarily in the ways that maybe we've been told play looks like. 'Cause I'm not going to be playing like a 5-year-old anymore. Maybe some people do have certain practices that would look like 5-year-olds playing, but allowing myself to feel into what does play as an adult in my body look like.
That is feeling like this full ass circle sea serpent moment, right? What is playing? What are you chasing your tail for? You know, like what? I don't have the words for it, but it's that feeling. You get to redefine play. You get to not to say, yes, I acknowledge that I'm having thoughts about what other people might be saying, and I'm not here playing for the sake of them to understand me or what I'm doing, right?
Yeah, I had been reading a book, and it was talking about how sometimes as parents, we have this guilt put on ourselves that we need to be like entertaining our children. And when that's not necessarily what we find fun anymore. Like maybe we don't want to sit on the floor and color or play a puzzle or do a puzzle or play a game. Maybe our idea of fun has shifted, and that our job is not necessarily to keep our children entertained. So that gave me the permission to be like, okay, just because my daughter comes to me and wants to play something, I don't have to be like, I don't have to guilt myself into it. Okay, this is what play looks like. No, play feels like play. It's whatever brings up that curiosity and excitement. And just because I've been told that playing a board game is play or fun, if it doesn't feel good to me, then it's not play.
Yeah. So I hear you sharing where it's like play is really a moment of connection. And so this like openness to perhaps, you know, when we're feeling like we want to play or our children come up and want to play, there's just connection moment. And it's like, how can we share space, share time, share whatever, and have connection be there, you know? And I think of this with Mercury too. Not this weekend that just happened, the one before, you know, she turned 8 months, and within the same hour she started crawling and pulling herself up to stand. So now her whole world has just blossomed, like the things possible are just infinite to her. And so I found myself sort of safety policing in terms of like, okay, well, she's not the sturdiest sitter or crawler because she's not used to like what happens when she moves her body this way. So I was like wanting to be near enough that I could stop her from hitting her head, but not like physically stop her from playing. So I was having that moment with myself of, okay, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? Like, yes, she face plants it into the carpet a few times, but that's sort of part of it. Like, and so I'm just reminded by that of what you share about, for me, what I'm going to be, you know, leaving our time today with is this reminder that what if, as a parent, one of my roles is to create the space for her to experience life or her curiosities and play the way that she would like to, and just provide the space, the room, the support, the belief that she can navigate that. Right. And then if she's asking me, hey, entertain me, and I'm like, oh, I do want to play right now, or oh, I'd like to do this, that is totally a part of it. But it's also like, it doesn't look like me having to keep her busy every minute of the day. It's just, does she have the physical safety of where she is, like not putting her on a set of stairs when she's 8 months old and being like, have fun surfing, like, you know, like it's not that, right? But it can be like, we're out on the floor, I can be journaling or doing whatever, reading a book. I haven't done that in 8 months, right? And she can be doing whatever, you know. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that is offering me the room for perhaps there's ways to start to do things that I know fill my cup up more, but that I haven't had the physical access to the past 3 or 4 months, since she was at that phase of wanting to move more, but fully needing my assistance to facilitate that. So I appreciate you sharing.
With my daughter, it feels like, okay, what she's wanting to do is not pushing my buttons. It's not lighting me up. and allowing myself to get curious as to, okay, what would I consider fun, and trying and finding those overlap areas, so that I don't feel as though it's just another give, right?
Yeah.
Because play could feel like just another draining give, and not nourishing. So I'm trying to me, it's like, okay, what would I actually be okay with doing or want to do? And finding those overlap areas with her. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm seeing like 2 hula hoops, but making a Venn diagram. So I was like, like very similar to like that sweet spot of overlap. And, I think I'll remember that we need to transition, but, like sort of closing out with this idea of how that in itself is another aspect of relationship, right? So I'm just curious about, for all of us, what could having a mind-body relationship with this layer build versus event look like with that sort of hula hoop Venn diagram?
I love that. Yes. Like, what would be overlap where neither side feels as though it's having to give up, something, or sacrifice, where it's a win-win for both.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is worth exploring. Thank you for that, Lori.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much, April. I would love for you to share out if you would like how people could access your own podcast or your pages, your work, or anything, or you can be like, I'm actually not up for people coming in my space right now. But if you would like that, feel free to love up on yourself.
Sure. So I am on Instagram, 2 places. So one is the Sandbox Pod, for my podcast called Sheffy's Sandbox. And then for all of the non-podcasty stuff, I have April the Poet, separated by period. So it's April.the.poet, April the Poet. And my website is aprillific.com. On there, it gives you access to all of my podcast episodes, ways to purchase my book. I had written a book called, well, it's more of a novelette, I've discovered, because it's a really short book, but it's a novelette called Sandra, a healing reimagining of the babysitter from hell. So
that sounds amazing.
It was a writing therapy project. It wasn't angels singing. I actually tell you in the book what song was playing in my headphones as I finished typing out the last few words. And it did feel like angels singing. It was like this divinely orchestrated moment. And it was just very healing for me to write this. And so you can go onto the website and find out how to get an autographed copy of the book. I also have several different offerings right now. I really would invite people with dreams to go on to my website, and there's a place where they can hit the microphone, leave me their dream. I love to do those dream interpretations on my podcast. Or if you want to book a private session, I have that available on there as well. I also do this thing called Sandbox Healing Adventures, and it's kind of like Lori's, it's April's version of what Lori does, in which we come to it with a sense of exploration and play, and kind of letting whatever wants to come through, whether it be Akashic record reading or hypnosis or numerology or human design or Akashic records. I can't remember what all I've said, so I got lost already. But just having these tools to play with, and I'm trying to think of what else. I think that's probably enough for now.
Well, I love all that. I'll make sure all of those links are available in the show notes. And I just have one last message that's coming through from, keep holding it up, even though no one can see it except for April, the sea serpent. If you wrote a novel, you wrote a novel. Fuck if someone else says it's a novelette. If you want to say you wrote a whole ass whatever, here's a permission for you to decide what you wrote. It's cool if you vibe with novelette, but you can take up the space you want to take up. And it doesn't have to make sense for someone else. You can write one whole sentence and it'll be a whole ass book to me. So I just wanted to leave that little feistiness, that little sauciness with you, because I was like,
I
It
love
is
that.
what you like.
The book is available on Audible
Yes,
and ebook and Kindle and stuff like that.
I'm
So
excited to dive into that, especially with how rich of a context you gave of like the experience you had with it. Now it's like, if it didn't already sound interesting just from what it's about, now I'm like, wow. It's like, yeah, there's layers to that offering. And really, you had shared so many layers. And I'm just, being reminded of how I introduced you of how there's this subtly in service energy about you, and how when you're sharing out, so much is coming from that. So I want to thank you for really giving us so many very like visceral moments of that during our time together. And I just
it was my
appreciate,
pleasure, Lori. Thank you
yeah,
so
you
much.
being here. Yeah. In today's episode, April mentioned the Face Your Feelings Friendsy, and that is a free offering that I have, and it'll be linked in the show notes, that gives you a playful way to start checking in with how you're really doing, and having your face be sort of the tool or the way that you're getting into your real reality, right? The one that's sort of below the surface that may be hard to put words to. And so she was mentioning that. So I'll make sure that is linked below. And if you decide to join, I would love for you to connect and share out what is happening. If you've enjoyed any episodes of the Improviding Life podcast, please like and subscribe on your podcast listener of choice. And as always, I hope you have a razzle dazzle day. And if that's not accessible, you can put an F on front and have a frazzle dazzle day.